Tayකට. So we have been to the natural resources within the forest reserves and the other ecosystems. So the most important two terminologies are the climate finance and the nature finance. But all the other terminologies, green economy, blue green economy, may be very much familiar for you because I could remember some of the presidential candidates brought up this blue green economy slogan as their in their manifestos. So why should we have or put our focus on these bioeconomies and the trends in the world? It's because most of the economic activities shows kind of a significant dependency on nature. So I have gotten this information from the World Bank website. So based on that, so you could see the fisheries and then forestry, agriculture, food, beverage and tobacco, even the construction, water utilities and energy kind of sectors, economic sectors shows very high dependency on nature. Whereas even other sectors shows moderately high dependency on nature. And also climate change and the biodiversity degradation and forest degradation have been addressing for a long time by different academia, researchers and the institutions. But we have to think and we have to focus on where should when to invest and where to invest, because we could observe kind of a reciprocity among these the climate change, biodiversity degradation and also the forest degradation, because it's a kind of a cyclical process. And also when it comes to the conservation and conservation, when we are raising the conservation funds, there's a significant gap of biodiversity financing. So generally, it has been estimated there's around $1 trillion gap, according to the World Bank statistics, with respect to this biodiversity conservation financing. So currently, as in the global context, we are managing around 210 billion dollars as biodiversity financing, while we are missing around 1 trillion dollars. So out of that existing 210 billion dollars, 83% is provided from the public sector and the rest of the 17 from the donors and other philanthropists. And then the difference between the climate financing and biodiversity financing is also very interesting, because the climate financing is always 9 times higher than the biodiversity financing. So because climate change is more acute than the biodiversity conservation, that may be the reason. So a lot of investors and people have the kind of willingness to invest on that climate financing. And having said that, as a country, we have our voluntary targets. We have committed to achieve so many targets. I think our speakers have mentioned that we are having 30 by 30 Kunming biodiversity Aichi targets. We have to achieve sustainable development goals, contributions, NDCs, and so for all of that, we need those financing and we need those resources. So since significant gap, so then what are the possible pathways of raising these finances? So one possible pathway is the grants, accessing to those grants. And we also having kind of interesting new tools are emerging, sovereign financing options. You know the bonds. I know the most of the our audience is having good economic background than me. So non-sovereign financing options and also market-based financial mechanisms. So Professor Rohan was talking about the carbon credits and the biodiversity credits. So those are the very prominent markets that we could access, and also we could enforce policies and taxes like polluter pay policies, and we are already doing the charging the royalties on extraction, and we are issuing permits on several raw materials. So so in the global context, we could have a look at and some of the examples. So Indonesia is one of the the pioneering countries who have issued those inaugural sovereign blue bonds. They have targeted the investors and the other donors, and their objective is to raise the required financial resources to conserve their marine ecosystems. And Fiji has also issued sovereign blue bonds, same on conserving marine ecosystems. And one of the interesting options is this debt for climate swap. So we all were very familiar once our country was defaulted with the financial debts and all the things. So this is one of the options even we have been given. So, but luckily we were able to get recovered from that condition. So this Barbados debt trap. So it includes some conservation funds and including some penalties for not settling down their debts. And then the Maldives green tax is established in, I think, 2015. So it's pretty not something very new, but they are also focusing on investing on the waste management and having clean beaches around their islands. And Amazon reforestation, it's in Brazil, and all the investors are given kind of, I think, 1.745 interest plus CRU. CRUs means carbon receiving units, and carbon receiving units are purchased by Microsoft. So that was the system. So there are so many complex financing systems. And despite the global situation, let's see where are we right now as a country. So Professor Rohan was talking about the payment for ecosystem services. So under the Knuckles project, Climate Fund, they have established a technical working group on payment for ecosystem services, because under one main component of that project, they need to establish a payment for ecosystem service fund. Because payment for ecosystem service is kind of a new tool, but I think IUCN was trying to introduce one with the micro and mini hydro operators, but it hasn't been very successful because of the conditions, bad economic conditions we have experienced during the past few years. However, this payment for ecosystem service will be again on the hydrological services, especially on the micro and mini hydro power stations. So, but the problem that we were discussing on was the legal background, the legislative underpinning. So the possible answer may be given with the Canopy Fund, the National Climate Action, and the Nature Positive Investment Fund for Sri Lanka. So it is under the Green Revolving Fund described in this National Climate Finance Strategy of Sri Lanka. So Green Revolving Fund is an innovative financial tool designed to support the sustainability and the energy efficiency in the institutions. But this green revolving fund maybe provide kind of a platform with sound legal background, because we are in a kind of a doubt with the existing legal frameworks. Do we be able to execute a payment for ecosystem service? So when we are considering on financing and raising our funds, so we are tend to face on several constraints, such as because nature is always considered as a public good, and as I previously mentioned, we have to rely on the public sector finance, and the governments, not only Sri Lanka, always have to come up with many carbon negative subsidies, like agriculture, transportation, and fisheries sector. And with the rising fuel prices, the discussion is again popping up. And at the meantime, we are having kind of a scarcity of investment projects, and also we are having kind of a substantial capacity gap of producing those kind of new concepts. So ecosystem services is the main basis of all these evaluations and the estimations and the other quantifications. So because these ecosystem services which are received by humans have to be quantified and analyzed very seriously, because not like other services and the goods in the market, these services are not having a market. So all the other goods and services, it has a price and it has a market, but these ecosystem services, they don't have a market. And the delineation of these ecosystem services is very critical, because for instance, the one tree could produce fruits for us as a food, right? But in order to provide these, in order to produce those fruits, it has to be fertilized, pollinated, and everything. So when we are trying to calculate the value of that food provisioning value of the ecosystem, the value of the pollination is inside that food producing or provisioning process. So we have to delineate how to differentiate the pollination service from the food provisioning service. So it is very critical. So that is why this the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, they have come up with this classification of ecosystem services. So they have identified main four categories like provisioning, regulating, and cultural ecosystem services. And they have also identified several other three supporting ecosystem services. And those supporting ecosystem services need to ensure the continuous supplying of all the other ecosystem services. So with the time limitation, I'm not going to talk about much on these ecosystem services. And when we are trying to establish a payment for ecosystem service, so similar type of mechanism in a country or a place, we need to have that the proper assessment of ecosystem services, because we are doing the payments on the additionality basis. That's the thumb rule. So in order to calculate or to measure the additionality, we have to have the baseline correctly. So it's the main challenge that we are right now we are having in front of us when it comes to the Knuckles project-based program. So I have several important messages, because you all know the forest are the economies because it provides water, climate, soil like raw materials while providing services like tourism. And also, as we previously discussed, more than half of world GDP depends on nature because you witness the data on how the different economic activities depend on nature. And the sustainable production of timber, the professor described it very nicely. So sustainably produced timber is have a crucial role in this as a renewable alternative. For instance, we use aluminum or steel, and which needs a lot of carbon to be emitted during the process. But timber is very fast, very renewable, and you could grow your own timber with your home garden, and end of 25, 30 years, you could harvest it. But to produce one aluminum molecule, it will take millions of years. And the NTSP is also not only the timber, non-timber forest products are very important. So these pictures I have borrowed it from my colleague Dr. Anil Rajapaksa. So he's right now doing one of the very interesting NTFP project in Nilgala area. So this is about the diasporas. In general, we call it BD collar. You know BD, the hand rolling cigarettes, right? So it's the Kalutimbiriya in local name we call it. So they are processing this and use it to produce this. This is not healthy. I'm not promoting this. I'm sorry, but maybe if there is some guy of CTC may not like to hear this, because this is one of the competitors of CTC. But this anyway, still Sri Lanka is importing this BD collar because I think last year they have imported more than 193 consignments according to the custom report. So there's a huge potential on developing kind of economic aspects, and this can be grown within our home gardens as well. So it's kind of a good home-based industry. And still, when it comes to the global context, 2 billion people still use firewoods, and the services, the health services provided by forest ecosystems are invaluable, and therefore investing in conservation pays off. So that's the last message that I wanted to deliver to you, because mitigation is always better than the adaptation, because mitigation is very cost effective than the adaptation, because we experienced the impact of Ditwa few months ago. So now we are dealing with most of the adaptation activities, but the cost may be very minimized if we have had some kind of mitigation activities rather than adaptation activities. So that's all I have to talk about. I may have used few additional minutes. I'm sorry about that. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Isro. That was very interesting, and I'm sure our private sector audience here would be most interested in the financial options that you presented. I know a lot of them from the banking community are now today involved in the bonds, and payment for ecosystem services is being trialed by the plantation sector. Very interestingly, the PECO Trail and also in the mini hydro world, as you mentioned. So I think it's really interesting that the field is growing today in this direction. So we are heartened by what you said. And since you're in the heart of it in the Conservator General's office, I think you have a big role to play. So thank you very much for such an enlightening presentation. We now have a short video clip on the work that we do in forest conservation, the closest that we can get in a patch that belongs to the Forest Department and which is funded completely through a public-private partnership for the last 7 years. So we show you the clip and then we go on to our next speaker, whom I will introduce before I go. And he is no other than our good friend, Mr. Hemantha Vitanage. Mr. Vitanage has been, I think, in this field for the last 30 years, maybe 3 decades. He founded the Center for Environmental Justice. Before that, he was in the Environmental Foundation. He's a pioneer in this field. And of course, everyone knows that he's a leader in advocacy. And we hear lots of very timely inputs whenever anything occurs. And we are very grateful to Mr. Hemantha Vitanage for what he does for the environment. So we like to honor him by asking him to speak to us on a topic that he's familiar with, protecting forests through justice, the role of policy, people, and environmental advocacy. So immediately after the film, we invite you, Hemantha, to come and address our audience. Thank you.
Sri Lanka is a land blessed with diverse wonders, varying climatic conditions, terrain, and geography. Of these unique ecosystems, rainforests play an important role. These tracts of lush forest cover are not just home to a diverse array of flora and fauna, but also act as important aquifers, feeding and replenishing the very water sources that sustain life. The Kannelia Conservation Forest is located approximately 50 kilometers away from the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Singaraja. The biodiversity of the Kannelia Conservation Forest is unparalleled in South Asia. However, years of China cultivation by villagers and their neglect has left vast sections on the periphery of this important forest decimated. The fern species Dicronopteris linearis, more commonly referred to as Kakilla, has taken over these abandoned agricultural areas and suppressed the natural forest growth. Biodiversity Sri Lanka, in collaboration with the Forest Department and the International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, partnered with prestigious member companies and planned the restoration of a 12-hectare patch of degraded land in a scientific and systematic manner. Initial forays into the forest allowed us to formulate a site restoration management plan. Based on this plan, with the financial resources from our member companies, under the leadership of the Forest Department and the technical support of IUCN, we used adaptive methods along with principles of restoration ecology to maximize the ecological functions of the land. Systematic restoration was undertaken by total removal of the invasive Kakilla fern, increasing planting pit sizes, establishing a well-functioning on-site nursery of native plant species, selective sparing use of fertilizers, application of soil conservation improvement methods, and innovatively using dry season watering and plant protection techniques. Over the past 4.5 years, we have observed tremendous progress. With the help of nearby communities who are providing the required manpower, the Forest Department and IUCN officials supervised the systematic implementation, facilitating the regeneration of the forest. Today, the regenerated area of the forest shows an amazingly diverse presence of native flora and fauna. From our initial baseline surveys, which showed no butterfly species on site, there are now 22 recorded species, some of which are endemic to Sri Lanka, a significant leap. In addition, 14 frugivorous bird species and several small herbivorous mammals now inhabit the land. The arrival of a profusion of invertebrates has also attracted the presence of the endangered pangolin. Our findings of the biodiversity and surrounding environment shows the introduction of over 18,000 plants across 46 species, emergence of native shrub species, increased soil carbon levels and maintenance through exotic species, a variety of naturally occurring pioneer plant species, the arrival of new animal species, second and third succession stages of forest regeneration in certain areas, the emergence of seed dispersant and pollinating animal species, and a total of 90 animal species recorded. The site is being verified and will be certified by international auditors. This journey is not one that we could have achieved alone. It is a result of the significant collaborative spirit and the wonderful partnerships we have built along the way, which has kept the ethos of Sustainable Development Goal number 17. It is also a fulfilling opportunity for our existing partners and new partners to join hands with us as we enter our next 5-year phase of maintenance and monitoring. Continue to partner with us in this unique initiative. Your contribution will also enable your company to register biocredits with tangible and measured results. Help rejuvenate and restore the treasure trove of rich tropical forests of Sri Lanka, bounties of nature, which will no doubt enable our future generations to live more sustainably. Biodiversity Sri Lanka, making the environment everyone's business.
Thank you, Shirani, for introduction. Distinguished audience, of course, the pictures are very close to me because I come from Morapitiya, which is one side of Singaraja. Those kind of pictures and animals and fish are very close to my heart. Of course, I understand the importance of economics, and which this year the theme. In 2002, Lucy Emerton with the IUCN conducted a research on the value of Mutturajavela. And she found the value is about 726 million Sri Lankan rupees for a year. And 485 million is about water retention, flood retention. And I requested Professor Prashanthi Gunawardena about 3 or 4 years ago to check and match this with the current GDP. And she told me it's about 3,800 million. And out of 3,800 million, 1,800 is about flood retention. About 800 million is about the pollution control. We never give a value to those kind of things when we talk about the forest values. We talk about the biodiversity, we talk about the medicines, foods, and many other things comes from the forest. But we never think about as the forest itself as a collective of the trees and habitats, what a value we gain from in economic terms. If you don't have a Mutturajavela in the current way, that will destroy whole Jaila, Gampaha and whole area because of during the flooding. So I think the value is little more than the forest and what it contains. So here I just want to go through a few slides to give you some pictures of what is the situation in certain areas and why we think about rights of nature is something that we should introduce to our country. And look at this picture. This was the Kabilitta forest in 2022. This was before the forest department stopped maize cultivation in this area. You know why this maize cultivation in forest, in Kabilitta, in Kotiyagala, in all these areas? It's because for poultry food. Now, poultry feed, we get eggs, we get chicken, and finally, we just pay the same amount as wherever we buy chicken. Probably we pay like 30 rupees. And I argue that if you value the loss of ecosystem services, you should have paid at least 300 rupees for that egg, not 30 rupees. You should pay not 1,500 rupees for that chicken, maybe 15,000 rupees, because you have destroyed everybody's environment, ecosystem services, which includes medicine, food, biodiversity, pollination, and everything, including some people believe that the goats are living in those trees. I might not consider that that is true, but that's what the people believe, and they go and worship those trees. So therefore, what they have destroyed in Kabilitta is something like that. Of course, the forest department had a very difficult time. Sometimes they put 15 forest officers, sometimes 30 forest officers. Still, they want to bring about 600 policemen. And one time, the DFO in the area said, Hemanta, we cannot manage this forest because tomorrow 600 people and 50 tractors are going to come to this area. Especially this happened during July, August season, just for maize cultivation. And then I had to talk to some of the top people in the government in that one of the previous regimes, because the police also refused to come and intervene because of the political interest on this issue. And next morning, there were so many policemen, and the forest officer asked me, Hemanta, how come this happened? Then I asked one of the Buddhist monks who helped me to bring this to the attention of that time very senior politicians, very powerful politician of that government. And he said, no, I had to speak to these two people, and that's how we brought the police. You know, the protection of forest is not that easy for the forest department, who is running actually half of their capacity. Actually, forest department, wildlife department, central environmental authority, all of them don't have the capacity. Now look at what happened in 2022. We filed the legal action and we got a stay order, and the forest department assured that no more maize cultivation will be allowed in this area. And this is only 2 weeks ago with the DFO and the regional DFO, Bharat Sanayak and all. We visited this area, and this is how it is regenerating. This is a roughly about 3-year-old forest in this area. You know, this is happening, this regeneration is happening more than 8,000 hectare forest in Kabilitta. So this is what we think should happen in many of the areas, because our agriculture practices are not really helpful, because we are destroying our forest for very cheap products. Sometimes you could get the same thing from an alternative source without destroying the forest, but using the forest for some other local uses, including all these ecosystem services and tourism and whatever the services. This is still a problem. And a lot of cows and buffaloes in this area. And what the people do, they put all their cattle feed areas in the buffer, and they put all the more than 25,000 cattle into this area and just for grazing. Still, it's in danger. This is not only in that area. Even the cattle from Pimpurat in Tangal and Hambantota are in Pimpurat and many other areas. The Forest Department, Wildlife Department, both of them are struggling to manage this situation. this is what we call Vandamademale. You can see this side, the natural forest. You can see what is happening with the electric fences. And these are for mango. Look at this. TEJC mango has been planted in this forest area by destroying such big trees. Look at the other side of the land, the same other side of the road. Almost like 70 elephants were there with such a tourist number of, there were 3 vehicles of tourists watching very closely the elephants. And you can see where the money is actually. You don't have to destroy the forest for mango, banana, even for brinjal. I don't understand why people destroy such a 1,500, 1,800 old forest and they just plant brinjal. I think it's nothing to do with the planting. And forest department and us discuss about, this is not about something like a washing money, just laundering money. It's not about, by just putting few plants there, they are not going to get the income. So this is something we have to be very careful when you are doing business. Why not you manage a system that the tourist guides, tourist hotels, the local farmers and the local tourist places, they all bring a sort of a business model that tourism can bring money to the local people and people will not kill the elephants, people will not destroy the forest area. So that's the kind of thinking I want you to think. Look at this. This is Hambantota. This is Hambantota Surya. Why they are putting these electric fences and putting this kind of nails into the poles of the electric fences? Because this is an elephant area. And the whole elephant area being destroyed and by 17 solar farms, which they haven't done even the EIA. I heard they have done the initial environmental examination, but they haven't even done their total project area is 516 hectares. If it is more than 50 hectares of forest destruction, you definitely need to do this kind of environmental impact as well. So this is not the case here. This is an interesting case. This is Rambakangmoya. Now, around 2020, that then government decided, okay, they will release lands for maize cultivation. And 7 people from Nugegoda area, they went with huge bulldozers and destroyed Pollebat, the forest. And we filed the legal action. Vanilattu and I filed the legal action. And 1 year later, or maybe 8 months later, Water Board called me and he said, there's something happening in the Rambakangmoya reservoir. And I went there with Professor Padmalal, current Vice Chancellor of the University of Sri Javadanapura, and we tested the water sample. As we enter the reservoir, we already found that blue-green algae. This is very, very destructive because of the high fertilizer they put into the farm area, about 1,000 acre probably, and it has entered the nitrogen and phosphorus has entered the water, and it has created this cyanobacteria is creating cyanotoxin. And the Rambakangmoya has been given water to more than 20,000 families, clean water, just filtering. We advise the water board that they have to use the filters, otherwise they cannot destroy cyanotoxin, which is carcinogenic. So think about that. Nobody thought about when they're cutting the forest and putting fertilizer into maize cultivation. It's again maize cultivation. They never thought about they will destroy Rambakangmoya reservoir. So this is where we have to bring the scientific knowledge, not just development interest, but the science and law into practice. Then you will understand why some people are opposing this kind of development, not just because that they love the nature, they love elephants, but there's a science behind it. This is again Siambalandur. This is an area destroyed by the farmers since 1980-85, I think. This is called Vattegam area. Now the solar company has gone and grabbed 514-acre land in the same area. It's an elephant habitat. Now they are putting huge electric fences to stop elephants entering into that area. Now we have done several cases. Probably you might heard about the other state forests, because we have about 1.9 million hectares, and about 5 million is about 0.5 million is about other state forests. Now they've been converted into reserve areas. The gazetting is happening almost every year. Now under this one, so they decided, they issued the new forest circular, which is 1/2020, and withdrawing one of 2005, I think, and which has given the protection for the forest areas. Now under 1/2020, these forests can be released for development purposes. So we went to the courts and we stopped this one. And the court, in the court process, we have agreed that the areas where animal or whether there's a slope, whether there's a forest area, or whether any area which looks like a forest area should not be released. You know, that we were able to block this case. Otherwise, we cannot talk about 1.9 million hectare or 29.2% forest. You know, by now we would have destroyed all these areas easily. Then Tabileta forest, we have one case, and Trikonamadu, which is one other area near Valikanda. We have another case, and only very recently, this case was filed in 2023, and only very recently there was an environmental impact assessment. It's a short environmental impact assessment, but I like that impact assessment. It shows how the area is a busy elephant habitat. And if they say, if the project want to continue, they have to put electric fences around that area, and they have to provide land and a new elephant corridor. Now, new elephant corridor is something we have to be very careful, because you cannot train elephant to go in a new elephant corridor. So you have to be very careful when you're suggesting something like that. You cannot teach anything to the elephants like that, you know. But luckily, 3 years ago, we filed the legal action and we were able to stop that project. Again, Pollepatha, I already mentioned about Singharaja Road construction. There are several other cases we have filed. And then we have a few other cases around elephant. That's why some people confuse about me as a lawyer, but I'm not a lawyer. I'm a scientist. I have a biology degree, but at last 20 years in this organization, we have filed more than 500 court cases. I want to bring you to some other different area. Now, this is a practice being done in many of the Southeast Asian countries called reordination. We have tried this in Nilgala when one of the politicians decided, okay, they want to cut this forest area and give it for people. But recently, last year, only the forest department was able to declare this as a reserve area. But we done this thing 2012, so many years ago. So through this thing, we were able to bring the attention of the government and the people about what is this Nilgala and why we have to protect it. Now, there's some questions about whether Lord Buddha says this thing, but it is in Vanaropa Sutta. We believe that this kind of statement has done. The forest is a peculiar organism. Now, some people question about whether forest is an organism or not. But despite, forest is a peculiar organism of unlimited kindness and benevolence that makes no demand for its sustenance and extends generously the products of its life and the activity. It affords protection to all beings. This is much before the rights of nature we have discussed. But our religion has also said something. When it goes to forest areas, normally we think about the forest is carbon sink, forest is biodiversity, but there are many other forest benefits we get from the forest area. This is something I took a picture in Nilgala, where we were able to bring all kind of religions, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, everybody was together when we done the tree ordination. And I thought this is something where you can bring the peace and harmony, especially because when you want to think about the forest and the forest protection, it is beyond any of the cultures, any of the religions. And this is something, a famous quote we used in a Pavala Postpaid case as well. And when Arhat Mahinda visited Sri Lanka, he told the king that this land belongs to the animals, birds, people, but you are only the trustee. So some of these concepts we have brought long time ago, much before the Western world think about rights of nature. We were being taught about the importance of forest considered as something much bigger than the individual or much bigger than its own benefits. Now, in 1972, I like this year 1972 because there were so many things has happened. The Stockholm meeting happened in 1972. Just before that, people, scientists and economists, everybody got together and they have created something called limits to growth. You must read that book, Limits to Growth. It talks about there's something is happening because of the Green Revolution, and at some point the population will start collapsing because of the increased pollution and many other things. Now, this 1972, Professor Christopher Stone, he talks about whether the trees have a standing. And that is what have developed few years later about rights of nature. And it took so many years, but in United States, they have initially taught about rights of nature. But in 2008, Ecuador has included rights of nature into their constitution. 2010, Bolivia. In 2014, New Zealand, this Wanganui River has been declared as a rights of nature. And then Colombia, then United States, and Spain also. So the rights of nature is a kind of approach that the nature itself, or the components of nature itself, or a mountain or a river, they also should have a legal standing. Like a company, we can go to the courts. Now, my organization, Center for Environmental Justice, has been registered as a company. We are not yet registered under the NGO Secretariat because we think we are a company. As a company is a legal person, we can go to the courts on behalf of public, on behalf of any of us, So that's why it is important, and you have the legal right. And like that, we have many of the nature, parts of nature can also have a legal rights. That's the argument about the rights of nature. So from the anthropocentrism. This is, we are talking about the ecocentrism, or ego versus ecocentrism. So here, in the rights of nature model, we are also part of the same. We are not above anybody. Right now, our problem is actually, we think we are superior, we can do anything, but we are scared about even COVID virus, nobody has seen, right? That is the important part of this rights of nature concept. Now, certain countries, the rights of nature have been adopted as the whole country, or the part of the country, or part of the natural entity, or whole natural entity. Maybe in certain cases, the whole river is considered as a rights of nature, as a rights of nature. But in certain countries, they have given parts of the river as got a rights of nature. Now, Ecuador, Bolivia, they have got rights of nature for the whole country, not only the entities. But the United States have rights of nature for certain parts or certain sections. So this is an important concept. I believe that when you're talking about the forest important for earning something or making money or for its business purposes, you also have to think about the other side of the story, how you can protect the forest for many other reasons. So I don't think, yes, of course, it can make money because the biodiversity is about money. I hope you have heard about the Tropical Forestry Conservation Act argument came in 1988, which United States Tropical Forestry Conservation Act told that since 1961, they have given money to various countries and put that money into a fund, or put the interest into a fund, or put the capital into a fund, but you can use that money for a certain purposes. And if it is above 5 million, the US has the veto power. And you have to allow the pharmaceutical companies to come and do the research on the pharmaceutical. This is where we were scared. Then we fought against this in 1998, 99, that period, and we were able to stop. And that's where the slogan was brought, Singharaja is under sale. It's not about Singharaja is under sale, but it could have been something similar could have happened if we have agreed. You know, now the Death for Nature swap is now coming. I think there are certain good stories in other countries, but we still have some concerns about whether we are going to lose our rights. You know, when something is happening, you know, you can use the forest for certain income generation, you can use the forest products, you can value the ecosystem services, but at the same time, there is something much bigger in a forest area. For example, I have a rukkattana tree in my home garden, and somebody very recently came to my house and he said, don't cut it now, because now it's more than 35 years now, and don't cut it now, the goat is living there. But it's beautiful, and the fragrance is very nice. You know, I like that tree, not because of the goat, but people believe the goats are living in the trees. You know, I don't mind whether goat is living there or not, but that is something in their mind not to cut those forests, not to cut these trees. This where in the old days, the Hime is a deep forest area where people normally don't go. Now there's no Hime in Sri Lanka, so even in the peak wilderness you can go and do anything. You know, that's the difference. Okay. Meantime, this is my last two slides. One is about the ecocide law. I think we have to understand that there is something, although ecocide is currently happening in the Middle East, you know, ecocide law is something important which is coming. Look at what it defined. Unlawful law, wanton acts committed with the knowledge that there is a substantial likelihood of severe and widespread or long-term damage to the environment. Look at what United States has done in Vietnam. Is some things, and there are many other cases people are talking about this kind of ecocide law. Now, it is getting some acceptance, and certain countries like I think Papua New Guinea and Fiji and Vanuatu already has accepted this kind of law, and it's coming. So I think when you have the entities with have a legal recognition as under the rights of nature, then you have the ecocide law is coming. So I think we will get a better protection for our natural environment. Of course, we can use our forest, but it is not about complete destruction of the forest like what happened in Singharaja few decades ago. Or even currently, you look at Wilpattu. Wilpattu judgment is something, it's not implementable at the moment, but something important because it says that the person who pushed this forest to destroy should pay for the damage. The forest department, which did not stop that happening, which allowed that violation, should. The case is not, the order is not implementable at the moment because we are still in the court, in the Supreme Court, because the other party has already appealed to the court, the Supreme Court, but we are waiting. But this is something I believe important for us. Right. You know, what is this picture? This is the poster we have made. This is about the fish living very close to my village in Tayකට, where one of the hydropower company wanted to destroy this and dam this and make about 1 megawatt, right? And then we found that 39 species are living there, 19 of them are endemic, and 2 of them are, they say, there are certain reports, there are some the contestants, but at least 2 species are sort of point endemic. So that's the area we wanted to destroy for 1 megawatt hydropower. So I filed the legal action. We organized our villages. More than 3,000 villagers came to the streets to protect this. And finally, we were able to stop. And this particular person sent me a letter of demand asking to pay 1,075 million rupees for the damages we have done to his project. You know, the amount, the value of this location, 1,075 million. Of course, that was only a letter of demand. But what I'm going to suggest here, because when Tilal spoke to me, he said, okay, can you make some proposal? Now, I think such as right to health, right to life, and we are now talking about the rights of the future generations. These all have been established in our court cases. Rights of future generation have been referred in our court cases. But we have tried putting rights of nature in our Wilpattu case, Singharaja case, and few other cases. And we think that we might go there at some day. This is one way for us to look at. Then, if we have a political visionaries in Sri Lanka, we can also think about some areas to consider or declare as a right of nature. Now, for example, Singharaja, why not? We want Singharaja to protect. Because if you lose Singharaja, even if you lose 1 hectare of Singharaja, you might not get back. You saw what Biodiversity Sri Lanka is doing in fighting with Kakilla, right? So therefore, Singharaja, Knuckles, Peak Wilderness, even the river here. I mean, these we have to protect for, not for our future generation, but as it is for, it has the right to exist. So I think this is something we have to think about. So, but of course, this depends on the citizenry, and we have to educate our citizens. And without having a more educated citizens on this subject, I don't think this kind of things are easy, because we know how Forest Department, Devani is suffering from trying to protect Prudia selenica. I don't think she has done anything wrong, because that's her duty. And Prudia selenica has been in our advanced level book as a completely extinct plant I don't, maybe since 2012. It's in our textbook. The Devani has done, but people are saying it's a job all the time. So I think maybe that leadership, I think that visionary is very important. But I think forest is something beyond. It's the benefits that we have learned. We might learn many other things in the future. I think therefore, as it is, the forest should given a title of the legal stewardship. I mean, this can stand alone. So that's my submission to you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hemanta. I know we are a little late, but we have a fantastic panel here. Would anyone like to raise any questions from Professor Upul, Atula, Hemanta, Rohan? There was such a lot of things that came out. I just have one small question after that. When we talked about payment for ecosystem services in the Knuckles region, is it something that we talk about practical?
Yeah, so it's really a practical question. So as I briefly mentioned, so the best mechanism has two main attributes actually. So it should be voluntary and should be on additionality. So you know that in our culture, Sri Lankan context, we expect kind of voluntary moves towards such kind of systems like this. And then the additionality. When it comes to the additionality, so in a best kind of thing, we have two sides. One is the ecosystem service providers, and the other side, ecosystem service receivers. So on the provider side, you have to set the baseline first, and then based on that baseline, you have to quantify quarterly or annually, or maybe the temporal scale can be defined. And so evaluated or the audited the additionality, how much of such ecosystem services has been increased by the service provider, and then the service receiver should pay. So that's the principle. So when it comes to the Sri Lankan, so it is highly questionable actually. So, and the main thing is the existing legal system. So we could actually start a best kind of mechanism with the kind of patronage of a donor or a treasury or something. But the problem is the sustainability.
So it has to be pilot tested. Yes. Thank you. Anybody else has any questions? Okay, so in the interest of time, I hand over to Aditya.
Thank you, Mr. Sangatna and Mr. Isuru. So now again, I invite Mr. Sangatna back to the distinguished speakers for their invaluable contribution today. Ladies and gentlemen, let us celebrate their contribution with a warm round of applause. Professor Kulsuna. Ms. Tulani Kularatna. Mr. Isuru Alavatta. And Mr. Hemanta Vitamage. Thank you, Mrs. Sasaratna. As we bring the formal part of this evening into a close, I'd like to invite Ms. Mandakini Yaragama, Program Officer at Biodiversity Sri Lanka, to deliver the vote of thanks.
On behalf of BSL, I extend my sincere gratitude to all who made this timely and thoughtful event, Nature Rights for a Greener Economy, a success. Today's discussion reminded us merely a landscape, but living systems that sustain biodiversity, economic resilience, environmental justice, and national well-being. Thank you very much. And Ms. Tulani Kularatna and Mr. Isuru Alavatta and Mr. Hemantha Vitanage for enriching this forum with perspectives that connected science, policy, conservation, and advocacy. We also thank, even though he is not here, to our very own director, Mr. Rohan Pityagoda, for that heartfelt welcome.